Welcome to episode 29 of the Hockey Toolkit. In this special episode, Coach Trimble and I sit down and interview Tim Madsen, who is the president and a hockey advisor for Nexlevel Hockey. We hope you enjoyed this discussion on the hockey advisory business.
Well, hockey fans, we have with us Tim Madsen. He's the director and owner of Nexlevel Hockey. It's a hockey advising company that helps a lot of kids all over the United States. And we really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Tim.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys for having me on.
Well, we've heard some really good things with some mutual friends that people know you and that are familiar with Nexlevel Hockey. And we wanted to get into a really open discussion. We can really discuss some of the inner workings and how that process of being an advisor works, and kind of answer some questions that we get from parents as feedback and input into what the advisory process is. My first question for you would be about what would you say to a parent who has questions about accreditation? So when you're a lawyer and a doctor, you have to go to school for that and get an accreditation. When you're a coach, you have to pass different levels of certification and background checks. What does that look like for a hockey advisor who's in the business of giving advice to young hockey players and trying to move them on to the next level? What does that accreditation and licensing look like?
Good question, because there isn't one. So for me, there's two things. There's two things people really need to look into when they're deciding who to trust with, having conversations with their son or daughter and putting, a lot of decisions about their career in their hands. And that would be, number one is, do they have any sort of background in the game? And, it's no different than any other business. It's no different than a financial advisor. It's no different than coaching. I mean, there's been guys who've been thrown in jail for pedophilia who passed all their coaching certifications to coach in USA Hockey or Hockey Canada, right? So for me, I always urge people, it's like, okay, number one, use that thing that we all use called Google and look people up. I just lost a kid. I just lost a recruiting battle about a week ago to a kid. And I wouldn't promise him that he's going to play in the Big Ten, but someone will. So I wouldn't sell my soul and do something like that. But he went with someone else, and I'm like, you gotta be careful. You don't want to bash other companies, but you're like, geez, if you just Google the guy and he's been behind bars, he's done some bad things. And I'm like, how can you as a parent, how can you not look up who you're going to trust talking to your kid every single week and putting their, becoming building a relationship with your kid? So that part really bothers me, that I don't think people do the proper homework. So I always urge that. And I think that's a good lesson for people listening. And then the other one is just, I think I mentioned it really briefly. It's just sheer experience. Have they coached in the game? Have they scouted in the game? Is there any kind of background in the game? Or are they just a really smooth talker on the phone? And I'm trying to talk to you guys right now like we're drinking a beer together. And this is how I talk to the parents and kids. And I think they appreciate that because I'm not reading from a script. But it's like any business. Again, you gotta go with your gut feeling when you're a parent and you're writing a check for help, and there should be an expectation for help from good people.
Tim, that's a great answer, and that's a tough question to answer because, like you said, there isn't a ton of oversight. Like, there's not a governing body that oversees the advisory practice like there would be if you're a lawyer and you have to pass the bar, or if you're a financial advisor and you have to pass the Series 6 or Series 7 exam. There isn't that same practice. So you do have to do your homework more than you would have to do with somebody else. But as you said, people slip through the cracks. And if there's bad financial advisors that find ways to scheme the system, you have, Bernie Madoff sat on the board of the NASDAQ, and he, like he went to embezzled $80 billion. So there are people that slip through the cracks, and I've dealt with people that I know that are not smooth operators, but not honest operators. And there are people like you mentioned earlier, like Graham James was a championship level coach in Canada, and he was a pedophile. So he slipped through
Mm-hmm.
the coaching certification in Canada. So it's definitely something that I think parents need to have their antenna up for, like you said. Now, the next thing you mentioned was writing a check, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hockey advisory business isn't a nonprofit. What would you say to a parent who doesn't know what a payment structure looks like? How are advisors compensated? If you're an attorney, you're on a retainer or you're an hourly rate. What does that look like for an advisor?
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple different ways to do it. The when we first started this 4 years ago, when I got out of the coaching profession, I didn't know any better, and I knew some other guys who had been in this a long time. They had just the one-time fee, and about a month in, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like I'm gonna have this kid for like 6 years. So two things. Number one, like I'm gonna lose money on that from a business perspective, putting food on the table for my family. And number two, I have to make money each year. So all of a sudden, in 4 years later, if we didn't change our structure early, I'd have like 300 players right now, and I wouldn't know what to do with it. And there's not enough time in the day. I have 30 right now, and I work 15 hours a day. You can't do this the right way, or what I think is the right way, and carry hundreds of players. You just can't. So we changed it. We went to a 12-month agreement.
I don't mean to jump in real quick. When you say 30 players, does that mean you personally? Because I know you do have a staff, which we can get to in a minute. So is that 30 players within the company, or is that 30 players that you yourself, Tim, oversee?
Right around 30 for each of us.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I just wanted to clarify that.
Nope.
So I understood better.
Yeah, give or take a few, but we stay in that range because it's a wild business.
Yeah.
And so we changed it to a 12-month agreement with the family. So now I can go to a family and say, hey, listen, it's 12 months. You're able to hold me accountable that I'm doing what you think I should be doing. And I can hold you accountable that you're not crazy and driving me nuts. So it's a fair partnership because we're locked in for 12 months and there's no exclusivity. Like they could go have 5 advisors if they wanted. But I like that structure a lot. Our company, we're at like a 95% renewal rate. And some of those we choose not to renew with. So I'm really proud of that's maybe outside of the money that we've saved people. That's probably the number I'm most proud of is the renewals.
So before Trimble jumps in here real quick, I wanna kind of backtrack before we go further because I think there's a lot of information we can gather just from again learning from how the business works here is what and I'll cut this out anyway. Sorry, Trimble's working from his iPhone. We can never get we wanted to make sure that we were facing you camera so that you didn't think you were behind a screen. And fortunately his computer his webcam doesn't work. So only his phone does. So that's why he's all panicky over there.
He looks like he's in a hockey office.
I am, and I'm very. Trevor's the brains behind the operation, but Tim, I would like to say this: you're disclosing a lot of information, and I appreciate and value that. So thank you.
So
you got it, guys.
What I want. So basically, what I want to do is backtrack and start kind of from the beginning of how did Nexlevel Hockey start, and then just briefly your background, and then how did it start, and then more or less, then we can go from there. I think that'll help kind of us as well as the listeners to really understand it. Because again, I mean, there's families out there that are like, what is even an advisor? And I know we're kind of jumping into all the hot button topics that people who do know already want to know, but it's like we kind of we're starting in the middle of the book. We want to start at the beginning. So do you mind going into a little bit of just your background and then how the whole company got started? And then I think probably our questions will make more sense even for myself. So it's been a long day.
Sure. So I grew up in Minnesota, played high school hockey there, went and played 2 years of junior, played college hockey at Niagara University. As soon as I got done playing, I was an assistant in the North American League for 1 year. Then I came back to Niagara, was an assistant coach for 7 years. I left here, went and took a head job with the Wilderness in the North American League for 2 years. And then I took the head job at St. Scholastica for 2 years. So that's 11 years between playing and going to school and coaching here. That I've lived where I live now in the Buffalo, Western New York area.
That's a good resume
What,
too, coaching.
so my wife and I just, we, after my second year at Scholastica, we just said it's time. I didn't want to chase it around anymore, and we just had a kid. So now it's like, what's next? And I didn't have, I would never have thought in a million years that I would do what I'm doing now. Because, and part of the reason that I wanted to come on here and I sent you guys that message that day, um, was because like I'm not dumb. I know the reputation of the business isn't the best. And I just wanted to educate people that you can't, paint everyone with the same brush. It's just like any business. It's just like coaching. It's just like I could tell you coaching stories of people that I won't deal with. It's no different. Um, but
Very fair, very fair.
so finally I'm like, well, I want to stay in hockey. I don't know anything else. So I'm like, let's do it. So um, a couple good friends of mine, our old goalie coach from the Wilderness, name's Terry Dunbar. He's a Northern Minnesota guy. Um, Played college, played pro. Um, I approached Terry and I knew I was going to resign from Scholastica in the coming days. And I approached him and said, what do you think of this? He's like, I'm in. Then I approached Zach Bargy, who scouted with us when I was with the Wilderness. He said, I'm in. So we started this thing from scratch. First 6 months, cold calling, kind of knowing what we're doing, kind of not knowing what we're doing, um, just figuring it out. And, we went from having, maybe a dozen players in 6 months between the three of us to, you know, me getting 10 phone calls a day now from people that I don't even know that, just from word of mouth and doing a good job taking care of our guys. So I'm pretty proud of that. Um, when you look at how it started to now, and you're walking out to the driveway praying there's a check in the mail to now where, a lot of it, you're not chasing as much. Most of it's coming to you because we've, knock on wood, done a great job of building up some credibility out there. So,
Well, that's a fantastic story, Tim. And I think that sometimes gets overlooked is how often the hockey business, although it encompasses multiple continents and thousands of players, it's really a small business operation when you get outside of the governing bodies. I'm here in central New Hampshire, and the New England Wolves is a program that Tim Kuhns and myself rescued from bankruptcy. And we built it into a really good program in the Eastern Hockey League. And now we have youth hockey, and it's a similar story. Like you grind and you work and you try to do right for your kids and your players and your parents. And hopefully you have a vision one day that'll lead to success, but also kids will be happy and enjoy and love the game, and you can grow the game. Um, so we're in the same boat, it feels like, and that's a cool thing. I know, Trevor, do you have more questions on that?
No, I mean,
background?
no, I'm glad. I definitely think that helps. Definitely gives us a background, gives everyone a background, and yeah, no, go ahead, coach. I know you got some questions, so
I do have a couple more. You mentioned the payment structure and retainer that you deal with kids on a 12-month plan. Um, that getting back to that topic of what compensation looks like. My next question for you is something I see with a lot of different practices, but not always. It may not always apply. May not apply to next level hockey, but a lot of advisors are compensated by teams, and especially at the pay to play level, and that creates a tough situation where you're looking out for the best interest of your client, but then you're also double dipping into a team paying for your services as well. Do you have any people on your staff that are work for teams? Do you deal in that kind of practice where you're compensated with by other teams, or are you strictly for the best interest of your players, trying to promote them to the next level?
no, I've had that presented to me before. And we've never done it. It's like, hey, it's 10 grand to play here. We'll give you 2 grand a kid. I'm like, okay, like, okay, what now? Yeah, so you're gonna give them a deal and just give them 8? Because then I'll just give them the 2 grand. I'll just give it to the family. No, 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 no. So now we're gonna charge them 12. So they're still gonna pay their 10, but they're actually, to your point, they're double dipping, and the family doesn't even know it, but they're paying me more money. So I don't like that. Our guys would never do that, or they wouldn't be with us anymore. Um, it's just not, it's not necessary. Like, I would rather get a kid. We're going to get more players by saying, like, hey, the family can only afford this, and most people are going to do it. And you just saved a family $3,000. And for us, that's going to lead to referrals. It's going to lead to positive word of mouth. That is more priceless than getting an extra $1,500 or $2,000 from somebody. So we've never barked up that tree. I know that tree gets barked up out there, but we don't.
Are there any particular uh, associations or programs that you recommend over others based upon previous experience, or like let's say you have a kid that comes in from Minnesota and he wants to go to these specific schools. Are you looking at the track record for that particular player to get to those certain schools and what programs would fit best? Or do you kind of say, well, I know the reputation of this coach and this program, I'm going to refer you to my friend here? How does that work for like the introduction process from getting a kid, identifying the right fit for him, and then finding a home for him?
Uh, for us, it's, and I say this to every family, it's not it's not where you want to play is where you're going to play. It's our job is to help guide you to where you belong. So, which is really hard because everyone, human nature wise, everyone thinks they're a little bit better than they are, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah, it's true.
And so they're trusting our evaluation from our experience in the game to tell them where we think that they belong. And that's part of the consulting. That's, you're consulting them on what you think they should do. It's frustrating when they don't listen, um, even though they're paying you. Um, and then we got to go clean the mess up a little later. But sometimes it's okay when they have to go through that and get kicked in the groin because it's going to make them better in the long run. So it's a little frustrating, but it's also okay sometimes. And it ends up okay at the end of the day because I'm all about these guys going through adversity and getting told no for the first time in their hockey career. But I also don't want them packing their bags 4 times in 1 year. I just don't think that's healthy. Um, so, but the other part to your question, I mean, there's organizations that do a really good job, and there's organizations that I have zero interest in dealing with. Um, so for me, like, unless it's desperation time, like we're not going to bark up the tree of Team X because I don't know, I don't think they're good people, and I don't like how they do business. And then there's people that are exceptional people in this game that those are the guys that you want to help because you help them, you're helping the kid. Everybody's being helped, right? So um, yeah, it gets a little tricky sometimes because if your best relationships are here, but he's not quite here yet, you're maybe not as versed here. That's when you got to, like you guys said, using your contacts and asking around, if I'm a decent guy or not. Same thing. Like, hey, are these guys good? Are they good guys? Like, do they focus on development? Is this coach under heat to win every single night? Um, all that kind of stuff. So it's case by case, but I mean, it's all about the hardest part of this is like, we're going to help get you where you belong. And sometimes where you belong isn't what people want to hear, but that's the job. So
I think that's a fantastic answer, Tim. Um, you know, getting to where you belong, right? Like that's so
mhm.
often it's like kids get sold a bill of goods that like we had this player go to here. So although you're not there yet, we're going to get you there because we demonstrated we could possibly do that. But every kid is different. Every financial situation is different. Every kid has a different level that they can possibly reach, given their skill set, their natural athletic ability, their time horizon in the game and playing junior hockey. Everything is very different for each individual kid. So oftentimes you see a lot of advisors and they're just promoting, we put players here, we put players here. But it's like, that's well and good. But what about my kid? My kid has a different trajectory than all those other kids. And what can you do for my kid? So I think, that tagline, I don't know if your business had that tagline, but putting you where you belong is a fantastic tagline, I think, for parents in setting realistic goals for their child.
When I write a book one day, when I'm done doing this, that's going to be the title of a chapter. Because trust me,
Well,
I could write one right now.
I'm sure you can. And I mean, if you let me write the epilogue or something or the intro, I'd be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, you guys are in. You guys are in.
So
Tim,
Tim,
what do you
yeah,
got for Tim? I want to turn it over to you for a little bit because I've been kind of bogarting the call.
no, it's all good, man. It's just how it usually is, right? It's usually the other way around. I never shut up. Um, so Tim, again, I'm more of in the boat of like, let's try and educate, even for myself. Just educate more and more. So if I am, let's put it this way. Let me ask this question: what are typically when you first are introduced to a player? What is the age that you're usually first introduced to them at?
Um,
Just give me
anywhere
a
from
number.
16 to 20. 16 would be the bottom end.
Okay, so I'm a parent of a 16-year-old. His name's Johnny Tryhard. I want you to be the advisor for my son Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
What is this process? How does this process look for at least working through you guys through Next Level Hockey? What is that? How does it from start here? What are the first steps that you guys jump into?
Well, the first step is always to build a relationship with the kid because I'll have a phenomenal conversation with a parent and they're like, "We're in." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! We got to talk to the kid first, man, because if he's not embracing the help, then you're throwing your money in the dumpster." So most parents appreciate that.
Yeah,
Um,
it should. Yeah.
and then you talk to the kid, it usually goes pretty well. And then you tell the parent like, "Hey, I'm good to go." So you start out with the relationship building process, and it depends what kind of year it is too. Like this is a really awkward time of year right now because
Right.
everybody's freaking out about next year, and nobody makes a junior hockey team in February, right, Andrew? So um so trying to manage that and make sure everyone calms down. And then as you guys know, there's a lot going on in the junior world right now. So
Yep.
I'm just preaching patience right now. And um but so there's a relationship building process. If you're in the middle of the season, anytime a kid wants to do video with any of us, we do video with them, do a Zoom every once a week, every couple of weeks. It's always on the table for them. We make sure to let them know that, and they got to ask us because you want them to really want to do it, right? You really want them to want them to want to be players. So half the kids take us up on it, and I got guys that every single week they want to do it, and I'm like, that's great. And some guys have never wanted to do it, so which is just another piece of the service. So, and then you just figure out where they're at, and although our evaluation is important, we're still not the decision makers. So like if I think a kid's a North American League kid and they're like, "Hey Tim, like who's your best forwards?" and you give them a short list of forwards, it's got to be their idea because you don't want to just be a favor. Because if you're just a favor, um, and you don't get off to a good start, you're probably one of the first guys out the door, right? And that's not good for the kid. So the misconception of this business is, well, all they do is find places for these guys to play. It's like that's like 5% of what I do. That's like nothing. That's like, and most people are like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, what do you do then?" I don't know. I deal with girlfriend trouble, deaths in the family, academics, um, teaching a kid how to set up a meeting with his coach if he's not happy and what to say and how to say it. Um, Managing mom and dad and educating them. Um, I mean, I could go on and on and on. Billeting issues, like that's the stuff that consumes most of my day every day. And the other stuff, like, I don't want to say it's not hard. It's not easy, but it's like not the biggest part of this job. And that's the misconception of this is, or maybe when people just start a random advising business, which we see pop up every day, I think that's what they think it is. And I think they learn real quick, like that's not what it is, like necessarily. Like I'm getting, 2 a.m. text messages about ice time. Like, how am I going to manage that? Like
Right.
they probably aren't expecting that kind of stuff. So it's a really unique business.
Yeah, Tim, that answer is fantastic. Like, I think as a junior hockey operator too, like when I first got into coaching 15 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm going to be coaching. But the vast majority of my day is not spent coaching. It's dealing with those billeting issues. It's dealing with managing kids' expectations. It's making sure that the kids are on time for things, and you're developing good athletes and good human beings, and our community service program, and paying our bills and doing the bookkeeping. It's all that other stuff. You mentioned, and you're one of the really genuine good guys in this business, and you mentioned something that is difficult to ask, but you said you get texts at like 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about accreditation, and we talked about background checks. And there are some tough guys in this business who shouldn't be in the business.
Mm-hmm.
That's an established fact. Um, how do you maintain boundaries? How do you maintain and tell a kid don't don't be texting me at 2 a.m. because you're the good guy, but there are other guys. Oof, that's
Right.
not a good idea. Where do we go from there in the future of this business?
And what they'll do is they'll just go dark on you and you're done, right? We're able to, like, what I would do, and it's happened before, it's usually from a parent, not the kid. I don't answer. And then the next day I call them. I'm just like, that can't happen again. That's not what this is. Like, I'm on your team, and there's nothing I can do about your ice time. So I'm here to vent, but vent to me at 8 a.m. I got 2.5 kids. I got another one coming in a month. Like,
No,
I got a life. I got a life too, guys. So, um, I think I speak for our whole group that we're a lot better at that than we were 4 years ago. Like, I mean, 4 years ago, a parent reaches out to you with something goofy, and I got anxiety and I wouldn't sleep at night. You're trying to grow a business. Now if it's something really goofy, I'll just look and chuckle, and I'll just call them the next day. And I'm cool with like every single parent we work with. And I'll call and be like, John, what are you doing? Like, don't do that to me again. So like that's just how we are. We're just dudes. We're like, hey, just don't do that again. Like, seriously.
no,
So
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you got
but
to
but
cover yourself.
yeah, but we've done a much better job, I think, setting the precedent early on. Like, I want to deal with the kid. I want to talk to this kid every week. I don't want to talk to you every week. I know you're writing the check. You're entitled to be in the loop, and you will be, especially with all the important things of finances and big decisions. But the relationship building part, like, you got to let me do this with the kid. You have to. Um, and since I started putting it that way, like, people have been pretty darn good. Like, they've been a lot better. So, but it's all out of love, and I get it. Um, you just got to manage it a little bit because you only have so many hours in the day, and it's like, man, like, I could have spent all that time actually helping your kid, you know. So it's an interesting world. It's fun though. It's really gratifying. Um, really gratifying because we think we do a good job. So
That's fantastic. Trevor, what do you got for Tim?
Yeah, so okay, Johnny Tryhard, we're on the screen. We've met. We've talked, and now what is the next step for you guys? How would you say, I mean, sight unseen, you alluded to video, and when you said video, I'm assuming you mean like you're talking about doing like shift breakdown, like game evaluation. Um So you've seen some of that then. Like what is the next step on trying to, you know, what is the next step for my kid? How do we now get him going to that next level? How do you establish that, like literally what is the next move?
Well, it's case by case because
Right.
you know Johnny Johnson might tender with the North American League team in November, and then
Excuse me, his name's Tryhard.
Yeah.
oh yeah, I forgot Johnny Trier.
We're going to someone else.
He's
Just kidding.
he might tender with the team in November, and then now that part's kind of done. Even though we all know he's still got to go make the team and all that, but camp's not till June or July. So now it's all like the development piece of it. So we are really careful with the video piece I mentioned earlier because you don't want to step on especially junior coaches' toes. I remember when I was coaching the Wilderness, and an advisor did video with a kid, and I went nuts on him. So it's one of the first things I told the boys. I'm like, hey, like if it's a junior team that never does video, fine. And there are some of those out there. Or if it's a youth team, they don't have time to do it for every kid, right? So we'll do it in high school hockey or midget. But Trevor, it's case by case because that kid that got wrapped up, his rights got wrapped up in November. Now I can focus on the development piece. You're watching the kid shifts, you're watching his games. We got Instat, our company's got Instat, so we can watch all that stuff. And they know that we have a background in hockey, and I'll just speak for myself. Like they know I coached before at some of the levels that they want to get to. So now if I text them a couple clips at 10 at night and their game got over at 9:30, and I'm like, hey, like you got to move your feet here, man. We talked about this last week. Like I'm helping that kid. I'm helping his development. And his coach might say it to him, but it's when you get it coming from a couple different ways, especially somebody that is in your corner, right? Um, like you can help these guys with their play.
Yeah.
And then it's just the day to day. I got scratched for the first time on Saturday. I'm gonna go talk to coach on Monday. I'm like, no, you're not. You just got swept. He's gonna be ornery on Monday. Wait till Tuesday or Wednesday. Here's what you're gonna say to him. Here's how you're gonna say it. Right. So you're constantly dealing with that because, especially at the junior level, the peaks and valleys are so crazy. One week the kid's on top of the world, and then the next week, like the world is ending, right? So you're just managing that and helping them, and then when it's time, so like the kid that doesn't have that opportunity to tender with somebody in November, well, number one, his production is going to dictate where he plays, like I hinted at earlier, alluded to earlier. Um, so if a kid gets off to a slow start, it might be like, hey, like I know you're better than that and ready for this, so let's just get after a little bit. We're just going to slow down here till you get there, because you only get one shot with some of these guys, right?
Right.
You have a conversation on a kid and you bring someone up who's not ready, they might not take your call next time. So you got to be really careful with that stuff. Um, but yeah, Trevor. It's really hard to explain. I think I explain what I do for a living like a different way every time when I get asked. Like it's really because like we do a ton of things. Like it's really interesting. So
No,
That
for
that
sure. Like,
that synopsis of what you're doing though that's impressive to me. Like most of the advisors I've come in contact with, it's really about introduction, it's about promotion, and it's not about development. And I'm impressed, Tim, that you have so much invested in that development.
well, a lot of these kids, we preach it all the time because we're in we want everything tomorrow world, right? Um, it's like whoever wins the long game, like you're playing junior till you're 20 if you really want to do this. So like everything builds up to that. So it's all about who wins a long game, not who wins tomorrow. So um kind of like I said earlier, like everyone's going kind of crazy right now. And it's like we got 8 months, 7 months until you're going to report to your team. So let's make sure it's the right opportunity. I mean, if you want me to make one quick phone call, might be able to do that and have you off my butt for 3 or 4 months, but it's not going to be what's best for you, right? And I think that's kind of the problem with our business too at times is, you know, you just go at people and finally they budge and take a kid. Now, in our profession, you're going to be like, well, I guess I don't need to deal with them for 4 or 5 months, right? And it's like, no, that's not the way it goes. Like, take that 4 or 5 months, be thorough, make sure it's the right spot. Like we said earlier, the place he belongs. Number one, you're not going to lose credibility with that person that you sold a bill of goods to later on. Number two, you're going to save yourself a bunch of work later because something bad's going to happen if you get the kid in the wrong spot, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that happens quite a bit. But I mean, we just try to make sure it's the right spot, and which isn't easy either, but
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I didn't want to. Every kid's situation's different. As you already said, I mean, it's no different than coaching and being or managing a team. Everybody's different. So it was more or less trying to get find out how if I'm a prospective, um, you know, I'm sure client probably is the word to use, but I'm sure just part of the team for your team,
mhm.
as a player, what would be the like what would that route be of, okay, let's establish where you're at. You've, as you said, you guys do the video, you've looked at their shifts, you kind of, I guess my next question would be, what type of demographic of players are you guys looking to take? Because to be honest, I've sat on calls where parents have talked to advisors and the kid from what we can pretty much know is going to end up being a tier 3 player his whole career. But I hear the spiel that they get and it's just like you're selling this family a phony, you're
Mhm.
selling them the fuzzy end of the popsicle stick.
Mhm.
So like how do you have a certain type of player like, hey, we're really more of a company that works with tier 2 and up, or are you guys willing to take anyone? You already said you've got only 30, you personally have 30 clients basically under your umbrella. So like what is the standard? What are you guys looking for to work with
Mhm.
player wise?
Good question. So when we started this, it was first like, hey, like we want Division 1 prospects, like we want good players, whatever. And then and then a good buddy of mine, um, really good buddy of mine, good hockey guy. When we were talking about me getting in this, I'm like, I want to get studs and so on and so forth. And we've had plenty of studs, but he was like, well, who the hell do you think you are? He's like, who are you to not take a kid if they're good people and genuinely need the help? Because most people have no clue how any of this works, as you guys know.
Yeah,
If they're
definitely.
if they're genuine people and genuinely need the help, and you tell them exactly where that kid is at and what the ceiling is, and if they still want the help, who are you to not help them? If his dream is to play ACHA Division 1, not NCAA hockey, well, he doesn't know how to get there. It's not easy like it used to be to play ACHA Division 1. So I changed my mindset, and my only criteria, and I'll speak for my guys too, for Terry and Zach and Timmy, um, like as long as they're good people, that's all we care about. Like you make your judgment 5 minutes into the conversation, and you either sorry, it's not going to work, or you're like, I'll do this if you guys want to do it. Because at the end of the day, if a player isn't as talented, guys, I know if I don't take him, someone else is going to take him, and he's not going to get the value. I don't know if this sounds arrogant or not, but I'm proud of the way we do things. Um, if I don't take him, someone else is going to take him, and I don't think they're going to be able to do what we do for him. Because I know we've saved families in the last 18 months over $1.24 million in hockey decisions. I track all that stuff. So,
what goes into that number? Like,
um, tons of different examples. You know, team down in Texas keeps calling you, begging you to come to camp. You live in Minnesota. Um, Come on, you got a really good chance to make our team, blah, blah, blah. You're a defenseman. Kids all excited, families all excited, feeling good about themselves. I talked to them. I'm like, well, hold on here. Like they returned 7D from last year's team. So plus they tendered 3 and they drafted 4. So you got to beat out 14 defensemen. So we're not going to do that. We're going to go to, so-and-so's got a camp in Minnesota and they only return 2 defensemen. So you cancel out the camp fees and you just saved the family $3,000 on flight, hotels, meals, maybe more if mom and dad both go, right?
they're bringing the whole
Tuition.
family for sure. We know that.
Yep. Tuition is a big one.
Yeah,
When it
I don't want to make it seem like I'm skeptical of your number. I'm just curious
no,
how you come up with that just in the grand scheme of things. It's easier to try and to understand that because that is a big claim, and I'm not saying it's not true whatsoever.
Mhm,
What I'm just mean by that is that's just that's a big ass number, and I
mhm.
would be pretty proud if I was able to do that too.
I'll send you my spreadsheet. There's nothing to hide. It's pretty cool. I'll send it to you. As long
Now,
as you
now, when you
don't.
say Tim, when you say tuition, saving tuition, does that mean are you negotiating like a say a tier 3 contract with an operator, or are you going um, evaluating apples to apples, looking at them from one operator to another and helping them choose a different operator for a cost savings basis? What do you
Good
mean by
question.
that tuition?
Good question. Not the second piece of that because again, it's got to be the right spot, right? So if you know a spot is the right spot and it's $10,000 and they genuinely can't do 10 and they can do 6, and you say they can do 6, you want it or not, most people are going to take it. 9 out of 10 are going to say yes. And it's not scumming them. It's like they can only do 6. So, and if they're not willing to, then you go to the next team that is a good situation for him, and they're going to do 6 then. So now you just saved a family $4,000. So, and then you got the college stuff too. It's walking. That's where it's easy for that number to get high, Trevor. Um, it's like dealing with like people don't know you can negotiate with these Division 3 institutions. Like, if they come in at 30, everyone's hurting for enrollment right now. If you come in and be like, listen, I can do 20, I can do 21. If you say yes, I'm in tomorrow. A lot of times they're going to do it. So, I mean, there's a ton of different ways where we get to that number. Um,
Do you assist with like Division 3 scholarship dollars with kids too? Like, do you help them with that scholarship process?
um, yeah, like a situation where I'm trying to think of a good example for you. Like, let's say the number's a little high for the family. Well, now it can be like, hey, like you guys are a little bit high. Like, you got anything he can apply for? Because most schools have, the $2,500 this, the $3,000 this, the $1,500 this. I'm not saying he just is going to get those because he's a hockey player, but he can at least the family can have knowledge to at least apply for it because most people don't even know they have that kind of stuff. So, just from having worked at that level, like, that's a question too. Like, hey guys, do you have anything he can apply for? Yeah, we have this, and this. Okay, well, go do this, and this. See what happens. So, yeah, it's just another way where you can give them some advice and consult them on how to approach that stuff.
And the Division 3 stuff is, the most part that mostly, our program deals in. We deal with mostly Division 3 athletes, and people don't realize the amount of scholarship, the money that is just waiting out there for them. When a kid applies to, an institution in Southern New Hampshire, if they apply in a specific major, they can get money off their tuition. If they apply as a certain, with a certain amount of college credits, they can apply as a transfer student and now get a certain amount off tuition. So there are a lot of scholarship money that's available to kids, but they don't always take advantage of that. And a lot of advisors just looking at the win-loss record, oftentimes of those Division III schools, and that's not advice to me, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's, I mean, you have, you know, indigenous money, you have, you know, I think I could have went to like 4 or 5 different schools for free back in the day, which I had no idea. I found out later because of the percentage of Native American that I
Hmm.
am. But you know, a lot of people don't know. They don't know there's ways to cut costs on things out there in this game. So, like, I'm confident telling any family without saying the word promise, which you can't say at all in this business, other than you're going to do your best. Like, I'm confident saying, like, whatever our fee is, like, we're going to save you at minimum what that fee is, and it's going to cancel out. And usually we save people 3 or 4 times our fee.
I mean, all the questions that I had, I mean, you've already hit on pretty much. My other big question was, how much do you guys have? Because, and again, you've already answered it. But Trimble and I have talked about on a previous episode of, where get the phone calls from the advisors and they're the ones doing the talking, and you've got 19-year-old, Johnny Tryhard who, you know, as a coaches, we want to see those kids advocate for themselves. Yet instead, you've got the advisor who's doing all the phone calls and, oh, my kid's not getting enough to like, but you've already said, I mean, you talk the players through and, hey, this is what you're going to say. This is what you should say. These are the questions you want to ask. And I mean, again, I mean, that's the right way to do it in my eyes. I don't have to deal with advisors yet until 9-year-olds get advisors. But when that happens, but until then, which, I wouldn't surprise me if it's right around the corner. Um, but yeah, I mean that would be honestly that would be the type of company that I would, if I have a player who has advisors, that would be the type of player I would want to have. Or that type of advising company working with a player that I have taken from my team, because as Trimble, I'm sure, can attest, he's probably gotten numerous phone calls over the years listening to just constant dribble that it's pretty simple to answer those questions if the guy only paid attention. And again, I think from our standpoint, this has been very enlightening. I mean, definitely very informative. And I think even from my standpoint, because I do think, as you said, it can be unfair because we paint advisors can be painted in quite a broad brush of all being the same. Um, and let's not, we're not going to kid ourselves. There are shitty advising companies out there. There's shitty skill coaches out there. There's shitty hockey coaches out there. Um, the list
And
goes
shitty
on.
husbands.
Yeah. Yeah. You two are married and it's Valentine's Day when we're recording this, so I'm not gonna even ask. But I I think it definitely is unfair when you've got quality. But I think, as you've already said, I mean, your roster is pretty much, as of right now, you said you handle 30 guys. So you're full. So that's from what I gather. So that sounds pretty much like you're doing the right things. It's when people are banging your doors down, as you said, like when you started, guys weren't coming in. You kind of were like, oh, am I gonna get a check? Am I not? Because who's coming in, who's not.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're at the point where you're turning people. Well, if you are, just broad assumptions. But you're turning people away. That's fantastic. I mean, that means you're clearly doing something right. And again, we've already said, we've reached out to some of our contacts at various levels, and like a Division I coach I've talked to, and he's like, yeah, Tim's a good guy. And I was like, okay, all right, well, yeah, we'll bring him on. So again, I mean, I appreciate your time and you coming on here and talking with us. And Trimble, do you got anything else before we kind of wrap up here?
Yeah, Tim, I got just one last. If you can give me one great story of a kid who's excelled under the next level hockey advising practice, and one kid or one type of kid. I know, because you don't want to bury a kid, but like one type of kid who has maybe not excelled, but the not right type of kid uh, who's moved up through the junior ranks into college hockey. A success story and a failure story.
The best success story is we had a kid a couple years ago, could have went and played anywhere in the BC League, anywhere in the North American League. Played the year before for the New Jersey Hitmen in the NCDC. And so these guys are all over both of us. And I'm like, dude, what do you want me to say to these guys? And he's like, I'm going to go back. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I respect that. It's tier 2 hockey. Just go produce. And so he goes back. Of course, everyone was mad at me. He goes back, and it's about the first week of December. And talking to Penn State, and they're like, you guys need bringing any more 20-year-olds? No, we're good. Okay. What are you thinking about? I was thinking about so-and-so. Oh, yeah, he's a good player, but we're good. Call me back like 2 days later, and they're like, hey, like things have changed. We're bringing a kid in at Christmas time for the second semester, and he's on a list of like 5 guys. I didn't even say anything to the family about it because I didn't want to get their hopes up. He calls me back 2 days later, and he's like, hey, we want to move forward on this. Do you think he would come? I'm like, yeah. So he goes in at Christmas, and then you fast forward 3 months later in March, he's got 3 goals in the Big Ten playoffs. And it's a 20-year-old kid who had absolutely nothing. Not one school in the country was given it the time of day to bring him in. And then a big boy like that comes along and brings him in at Christmas. And he just was nominated top 5 in the top 5 finalists for the Humanitarian of the Year award in NCAA hockey. So that's definitely the coolest story that I think about all the time. It's so cool. As far as one that wasn't successful, I would say the sad ones, and I'm not perfect. No one's perfect, but I think the sad ones are when guys chase the 4 letters of the league that they play in instead of, as I've said 50 times, instead of going where you should go right now and just stick with the process. And then make the jump the following year. Like I had a kid a couple of years back, like he played on like 5 teams. And like, I can't believe he didn't quit hockey. Like I've never seen someone so defeated. And it was like, gosh, if you would have just went to the one like that we talked about first, man, like that's a lot of air miles and money. And but those are the tough ones when, and again, it's everything's a family decision. You're just here to tell them what, give them advice. But we've had a few of those, and those are tough. Just because you feel really bad for the kid, and he's maybe listening to some other people instead of you, and chasing the social media 4 letters. So I would just say, as a group, the small number of those we've had, those hurt. Those keep me up at night. I hate those.
Tim, I couldn't thank you enough. This conversation could have gone a lot of different ways. I've gotten plenty of screaming matches with advisors, but I really appreciate your honesty, your candor. This is successful, and I appreciate everything you've said on this podcast. And it's been really an enlightening, positive, educational, good conversation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim.
Yeah, boys, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you responding when I responded to your tweet there, and being open-minded to hearing, just a different side from someone that's in the trenches to just get another perspective on it. Yeah, it's an interesting business for sure. So unfortunately, it's, some of the reputation's probably warranted, but again, I just urge, you still got to be open-minded and understand that, it's no different than coaching. It's no different than anything else. So, but I really appreciate it, guys. You guys have an awesome night.
Thanks a lot.